The rain had already soaked through Sadie Lowell's thin uniform by the time she spotted the black car waiting at the curb. Exhaustion blurred her eyes after a double shift at the Bayharbor diner, so she barely glanced at the license plate before climbing in. The door closed behind her with a soft, expensive sound, one that didn't belong on her side of town. She looked up and froze. The man behind the wheel wasn't an Uber driver. No phone on the dashboard, no rideshare logo, no polite smile. Just a charcoal suit, dark gloves, and a quiet composure that filled the car like a presence all its own. He turned his head slightly, his voice calm but commanding. "Where are you headed?" "Bay Street," she said, brushing rain from her face. "Near the marina." He nodded once, eyes returning to the road ahead. "Good. That's on my way." The Maybach eased into motion, gliding through the wet streets with unnerving silence. No radio. No small talk. Only the rhythmic hum of the engine and the rain whispering across the glass. Sadie sat stiffly, clutching her backpack, her reflection faint in the dark window. She could feel his quiet strength filling the space between them, not threatening, just certain. Every turn of the wheel was smooth, controlled, like he'd been born behind it. Streetlights traced his profile in golden shadow, sharp jaw, unreadable eyes, a man too composed for this hour, this town. When they reached her apartment building, he stopped without a word. She mumbled a thank you and stepped out, the cold air hitting her like a slap. By the time she turned back, the car was gone, no headlights, no trace. It wasn't until the next morning that she realized her pendant was missing, the small silver compass she never took off. Panic surged. Then, at 8:32 a.m., a knock on her door. A courier stood there, rain dripping from his cap, holding a black box. Inside lay her pendant, polished and gleaming. Beneath it, a folded note written in neat, precise handwriting. Pier 3. 8:45. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and sea salt. And somewhere deep inside, Sadie felt the quiet pull of a decision she already knew she would make. It started a week after the note. Whatever happened at Pier 3, it changed something between them. Caden Voss began appearing outside the Bayharbor diner just before closing, always the same car, the same driver, the same calm stillness inside the tinted glass. At first, Sadie told herself it was coincidence. A man like that wouldn't waste his time on a waitress who smelled of coffee and salt air. But when the passenger window rolled down and he said simply, "You shouldn't walk home this late," she found herself climbing in without argument. It became a ritual. Rain or fog, Caden waited. He never asked questions, but he listened, the kind of listening that made her words sound heavier, more important than they were. She told him about her dream cafe, seafoam and sugar, with windows facing the ocean, lavender pastries, and music that didn't rush you. She talked about the debt she was drowning in, about Lyra, her younger sister still in school, still believing life was kind. Caden rarely spoke, but sometimes his gaze flicked toward her reflection in the window, as if memorizing it. The drives were silent, yet comforting. He didn't touch her. Didn't flirt. But his presence filled the car like gravity, steady, dark, inevitable. Tonight, for the first time, someone else was driving, a silent man in a black cap. They were halfway down the coastal road, moonlight slicing through fog, when headlights flared suddenly in the mirror, a bike, too close, engine growling like a predator. Sadie turned, heart hammering. "Caden?" He didn't look back. "Stay down." Before she could react, the driver swerved sharply, tires screaming against wet asphalt. The Maybach spun, missing the guardrail by inches. The motorcycle shot past, its taillight disappearing into the mist. Silence crashed down, broken only by Sadie's ragged breathing. The driver muttered something in another language, gripping the wheel. Caden's voice, when it came, was calm, too calm. Go to Route 9. No more coastal roads. The driver obeyed instantly. You're not alone. And if you've got even a little bit of strength left, just grab your phone. Hit the like button, drop a few words in the comments. And subscribe. For you, it's just a second. But for me, it's a sign. A sign that there's someone out there. Someone real. Who's listening, who feels this too. Thank you for being here. Really. From the heart. All right, let's keep going. Sadie pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her pulse. What just happened? Caden's eyes flicked toward the mirror, scanning the darkness. Nothing you need to worry about. But there was something in his face, the faint tightening around his mouth, a flash of steel behind the calm, that told her this wasn't nothing. When he finally dropped her off, he walked her to the door for the first time. He'd always waited in the car before. Tonight, he stepped out. The street was quiet, the sea whispering against the docks. You shouldn't be alone so much, he said quietly. She tried to laugh, to make it light. You make it sound dangerous. Caden's gaze lingered on her a moment longer. It is. Then he turned and disappeared into the mist, leaving her with the hum of the idling car and a truth she could no longer ignore. Whatever world Caden Voss belonged to, danger was its language. By late October, Bayharbor had turned gray, fog rolling in off the water like slow-moving ghosts. The diner's neon sign flickered weakly against the rain as Sadie wiped down the counter for the 100th time that night, trying not to think about Caden Voss. She hadn't seen him in 2 weeks. Not since the night on the coastal road. She told herself that was good. Normal. The kind of silence that should have returned her life to its small, predictable shape. But it hadn't. Everywhere she went, she expected to see that black Maybach parked nearby. She'd told people he worked in finance, it was what he'd said once, casually, the first night they drove together. The illusion of distance shattered one morning in the laundry room. Her neighbor, Mrs. Greeley, a retired schoolteacher with a talent for gossip, was sorting clothes beside her, talking about the cranes down by the docks. You live near that Voss place, don't you? She said offhandedly. Funny man. Everyone thinks he's a banker, but he's not. He owns half the port. Sadie's hand froze around a bottle of detergent. Half the port? Mrs. Greeley nodded, lowering her voice as if the washing machines might be listening. Word is, he runs ships that don't always come through customs. Avalon Syndicate, they call it. You didn't hear that from me. Sadie barely made it upstairs before she opened her phone. The search results were a punch to the chest. Caden Voss, alleged head of the Avalon Syndicate. Smuggling, extortion, racketeering, the headlines blurred together. A man described as untouchable, rumored to control the Bayharbor docks and everything that moved through them. Her stomach turned. The late-night drives, the motorcycle, his silent driver, all of it snapped into a new, horrifying focus. 2 weeks later, he appeared again outside the diner, waiting, as if nothing had changed. Sadie didn't go. She stood behind the window, heart in her throat, watching the dark shape idle beneath the streetlight until it finally pulled away. Then she blocked his number. Deleted every message. And for the first time in months, she walked home alone. But solitude, she quickly learned, was an illusion. The trash bin was empty again, though she hadn't taken it out. The door lock no longer stuck, someone had oiled it. Once, a small container sat by her door, soup, still warm, no note this time. Yet she knew the scent of the paper lid, faint tobacco and sea salt. Fear warred with something else inside her, something softer and far more dangerous. Gratitude. She started checking her window before bed, half hoping to catch a shadow moving near the curb. Nothing. Only the sound of the ocean and the faint hum of engines somewhere far below the fog. He wasn't gone. He was just watching. And lying awake, she wondered which frightened her more, that Caden Voss was still watching. Or that she wanted him to. The first time she met Riven Crow, it was daylight, which somehow made it worse. He was waiting outside the diner beside the Maybach, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms inked with faded Latin. His eyes were a flat gray that didn't bother pretending to smile. Miss Lowell. His voice carried that same calm Caden used when ending conversations. He asked me to give you this. In his palm lay a small silver key fob, sleek, unmarked, about the size of a thumb drive. Sadie frowned. What is it? A line straight to the boss. Press if you're ever in trouble. I'm not in trouble. Riven's mouth twitched, not quite a grin. Then don't press it. He turned away before she could argue, disappearing into the crowd as easily as smoke. For 3 days, the thing sat in her drawer. By the 4th, she almost forgot it existed. It happened on a Thursday, just after noon. Lyra was home visiting from college, half asleep on the couch while Sadie made coffee. A knock sounded, brisk, businesslike. Electrician, the man said when she opened the door. Building's having a voltage issue. Need to check your panel. He wore the uniform, the badge, even carried a clipboard. Sadie hesitated, then stepped aside. He smiled, wrong. Too slow, too deliberate. Lyra stirred, yawning. Everything okay? The man's hand moved under his jacket. Sadie saw the flash of metal. Run! Lyra screamed as Sadie dove for the drawer. Her fingers closed around cold silver. She pressed the fob. Nothing. Then everything. Outside, tires screamed. The Maybach skidded across the curb, headlights cutting through the rain. Caden was behind the wheel this time, no driver, no hesitation. He was out of the car before it stopped, gun drawn, moving with lethal calm. Shots cracked, muffled, professional. The metallic smell hit before the silence did. Sadie gagged, realizing the man wasn't moving. Clear, Caden called, voice steady as stone. Sadie was on the floor, shielding Lyra, heart hammering so loud she couldn't hear her own sobs. Caden knelt beside her, holstering his weapon. You pressed it. Good. Who was that? She gasped. Wrong clan. Marlowe colors. His gaze swept the apartment, cold and precise. They must have traced your name through me. He looked at the blood spreading across the tiles, then back at her. Pack what matters. A beat. Then, quieter, no time. Take her out. By the time the car stopped, it was almost dawn. None of them had spoken the entire drive. The safe house by Lake Mallory looked like something from a forgotten postcard, pale wood, tall reeds, water dark as glass. Quiet enough to hear your heartbeat. Lyra stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. This doesn't feel like safety, she whispered. It is, Caden said. Because they don't know it exists. Sadie faced him, anger finally pushing through fear. You said I wouldn't be part of your world. You weren't, he answered simply. They made you. Riven stepped through the doorway, eyes sharp. Roads clean. No tails. Caden nodded once. Good. We stay until I say otherwise. Sadie exhaled shakily. How long? As long as it takes. She wanted to scream that she had a job, a life, bills, all the fragile pieces of normal she was losing. But the look in his eyes, sharp, protective, absolute, silenced her. Outside, the lake rippled under the wind. Inside, the air felt too still, too heavy. Riven leaned against the doorframe. You'll get used to it. Nobody gets past the boss's safe houses. Sadie shot him a look. That's supposed to comfort me? Wasn't trying to. Caden's voice cut through the tension, low and final. You're safe here, Sadie. That's all that matters. But when she met his gaze, she saw something flicker behind it, the same darkness that lived in the headlines, the one she'd tried to pretend wasn't real. And as night fell over Lake Mallory, Sadie understood the truth she hadn't wanted to face. She hadn't escaped his world. She'd been pulled all the way inside. The lake house slept under fog that night, a quiet so deep it felt carved out of stone. Sadie stood by the window, watching rain ripple across the water. Lyra coughed in her sleep behind her. The antibiotics were nearly gone. Caden's men promised to bring more soon, but soon wasn't good enough. So she waited until the house settled, until Riven's footsteps faded down the hallway, then slipped on her coat and boots. The night swallowed her whole. Bayharbor was half an hour away. She told herself she'd be back before anyone noticed. She never made it. The van came out of nowhere, black, silent, headlights off. Hands grabbed her before the scream left her throat. A chemical sting filled her lungs, and the world went dark. When she woke, the air smelled of rust and seawater. Chains rattled when she tried to move. The room was vast, an abandoned warehouse by the docks, concrete walls dripping with salt and oil. Through the broken windows she could hear the tide crashing against metal pylons. A man stepped out of the shadows. Mid-40s, sharp suit, slick hair, smile like a blade. Sadie Lowell, he said, savoring the name. You don't belong in his world. But now you'll buy me a ticket out of it. She didn't know his face, but she knew the name whispered in Caden's circles. Silas Marlowe. He crouched in front of her, tapping the barrel of his gun against his knee. Tell your boss that if he wants you back, he meets me here. Alone. I don't think he'll negotiate, she whispered. Silas smiled wider. He will. You're his soft spot. Back at Lake Mallory, Caden's phone buzzed at 2:03 a.m. Riven's voice was tight. She's gone. Security feed shows nothing after midnight. Caden didn't answer. He was already moving, coat, keys, gun. No hesitation. By the time they traced the signal from the key fob she still carried, he knew where to go. Stay here, he ordered Riven. No backup. Boss, that's suicide. She's worth it. He drove alone into the storm. The warehouse loomed like a skeleton over the pier, its rusted frame lit by a single swinging bulb. Caden killed the lights on the Maybach and stepped into the darkness. The sea crashed somewhere beyond, black and endless. Inside, voices echoed. He'll come. He always does. He slipped through the corridors, moving with ghost-like precision, counting steps, memorizing exits. Then he saw her, bound to a chair in the center of the open floor, hair plastered to her face, shivering but alive. Silas stood beside her, weapon loose in his hand. Voss, he called, grinning into the shadows. Finally. Caden's voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. You should have left her out of this. Then the lights went out. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the power grid shorted. A hiss filled the air, sprinklers bursting open, flooding the concrete floor. Smoke machines disguised as fire alarms triggered, cloaking the room in steam. Shouting. Footsteps. Gunfire swallowed by water and echoes. Caden moved through the chaos like he was born for it. When a man lunged at him, he fired once, precise. Another slipped, went under. The sea poured through the broken loading doors, rising fast. He reached Sadie, tearing the ropes from her wrists. Can you walk? She nodded, barely. Caden, behind you. He turned, disarming the attacker in a blur, guns skittering across the wet floor. The man hit the water, didn't rise. Let's go. They waded toward the exit, half-blind through smoke and alarm lights. But then Silas appeared again, coughing, soaked, still holding his pistol. This isn't over, he shouted. You can drown me, but you can't erase me. Caden raised his gun. Sadie grabbed his arm. Don't. Her voice trembled, but her grip was iron. Please. Not like this. For a heartbeat, everything froze, the alarms, the water, even Caden's breathing. Then he lowered the gun. Get out of my sight, he said to Silas, his voice cutting through the chaos like steel through fog. They ran, slipping out through the emergency doors as the building drowned behind them. 3 days later, news broke across every network. Silas Marlowe confesses to organized trafficking and murder for hire. The video showed him, soaked, trembling, eyes hollow, speaking straight into the camera. No one knew who leaked it. No one could trace the source. The Marlowe empire collapsed overnight. Sadie sat on the porch of the safe house, blanket around her shoulders, watching the lake mirror the gray sky. Caden stood nearby, silent, unreadable. She looked at him. You could have killed him. I did, he said quietly. Just not the way he expected. They watched the fog roll back across the water. For the first time, she realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. But she wasn't sure that was safer. Keycap 6 The new terms. Morning light leaked through the safehouse blinds. For once, there were no sirens, no engines, only the sound of the lake against the pier. Sadie found Caden on the porch, a mug of untouched coffee beside him, watching the mist lift. You didn't sleep, she said. He didn't look at her. Neither did you. Because I was thinking. She stepped beside him, arms folded tight. About what happens now. Caden's jaw tightened. You go back to your life. I make sure nobody touches it. That's not a life. That's a cage with a prettier view. He turned, eyes narrowing just slightly. You'd rather I stop protecting you? I'd rather you stop controlling everything. Silence. Then, quietly, tell me what that means. Sadie drew a slow breath. If we do this, whatever this is, it's on new terms. Caden's expression didn't change, but his hand stilled against the mug. No guards in the shadows, she said. No men following me to work. No hidden cameras in my apartment. You think I'd? I know you would, she cut in. You said protection. You meant surveillance. I can't live like that. He studied her for a long moment. And if something happens? Then you trust me to tell you. You let me decide what's danger and what's just living. That's not how my world works. Then maybe that's the point, she said. We try something that isn't your world. Caden's gaze shifted toward the lake. And if I can't? Then I walk, she said simply. For good. He hesitated, just long enough for her to see the battle behind his eyes. Then he said, fine. No guards. No cameras. You set the terms. She blinked. Just like that? A faint smirk touched his mouth. You're the only person who's ever told me what to do and lived. Flattering, she muttered. True. With the Marlowes gone, Bayharbor was quiet again, at least for now. They left at dusk, the drive back to the city silent, both lost in thoughts they didn't dare voice. By evening, they were back in Sadie's apartment, small, old, and smelling faintly of coffee grounds. Caden stood awkwardly in the doorway, out of place in the ordinary world. So this is it, he said, scanning the tiny kitchen. No guards. Just us. Don't sound so tragic. He stepped closer. You're sure about this? Yes. If you stay as Caden. Not as the man everyone fears. He gave a quiet laugh. You think they're different men? You tell me. He didn't answer, just looked at her for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and placed something on the counter, his phone, a slim black device with encrypted lines. No calls, no trackers, he said. Only this number. He slid a folded card across the counter, her new phone, already registered under a different name. She slid it back toward him. No trackers. There aren't any, he said. You can check. Good, she said softly. Because that's rule number 1. Rule number 2? You tell me the truth. Always. He nodded slowly. Even when it hurts. Especially then. Later, they sat on the floor by the window, legs stretched out, the sound of cars below mixing with the sea breeze. What do people talk about when they're not negotiating power? Caden asked suddenly. Rent, she said dryly. Bills. Dreams they probably won't reach. And you? Seafoam and sugar, she said. Still want to open it. Just maybe without getting kidnapped first. He smiled faintly. I can fund it. That's not the point. Then what is? That it's mine. He nodded once, thoughtful. You don't need me to save you. No, she said softly. But maybe I need you to understand that. The nights that followed were quiet. No cars idling outside, no shadows at her window. Sometimes he stayed, sometimes he vanished for days. When he returned, he came without guards, without warnings, carrying groceries or coffee, like an ordinary man pretending to learn how to be one. One evening, while washing dishes, she felt his hands slide around her waist. Her body stiffened before relaxing. It wasn't fear now, it was memory, learning to trust touch again. No cameras, she murmured. He kissed the edge of her jaw. I know. No guards? Only me. She turned, water dripping from her hands, eyes meeting his. And total honesty? Caden's voice was low, rougher than usual. Even when it hurts. Good, she whispered. Because I'm still afraid of you sometimes. He didn't flinch. Then I'll keep trying to be someone you don't have to fear. And for once, the silence between them wasn't dangerous, it was fragile, human, almost peaceful. Outside, the fog rolled back from the water, and somewhere in the distance, the port lights flickered back to life. Keycap 7 The beginning. 6 months later, the pier smelled of salt and espresso. Seafoam and sugar had finally opened, white walls, sea glass tables, and the hum of soft jazz under the rain. Locals drifted in, curious, warming their hands on cups. Sadie poured herself. The sign above the counter glowed faintly blue, like the horizon before dawn. She'd built it quietly. The funding had come through a small investment firm, anonymous, efficient, no trace of Caden Voss. Just a check, a signature, and silence. She didn't ask questions. Maybe that was part of the deal. By noon, the rain picked up, streaking the wide windows. Sadie wiped down the counter, smiling to herself, feeling, finally, still. The bell over the door chimed. He stepped inside. No suit this time, no shadows following. Just Caden in a black sweater, rain darkening his hair, his eyes softer than she remembered. He said nothing at first. Just set a takeaway cup on the counter, her logo printed neatly on the sleeve. This time, he said quietly, the Uber's yours. Sadie froze, then laughed, the sound breaking through months of quiet tension. You remembered. I remember everything, he said. For a heartbeat, they stood there, the world narrowed to the sound of rain and coffee machines. No guns, no guards, no lies. Just two people who'd somehow survived each other. She slid him a cup. On the house. He took it, eyes meeting hers. That's not good business. It's not business, she said. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the pier in silver light. Inside, the air smelled of sugar, coffee, and something new, not fear, not danger, but the quiet pulse of beginning. For once, neither of them looked back.